smile for my lawyer.
The phone rang at 11:47 p.m., cutting through the sound of rain hammering my hotel window like bullets on tin. I'd been staring at spreadsheets for 3 hours trying to make sense of why our construction project was losing money faster than a hemophiliac in a razor factory. "Mr. Thompson, this is Marcus at the front desk of the Grand Plaza Hotel." I rubbed my eyes. "Wrong number, pal. I'm at the Holiday Inn across town." "No, sir, there's been a mistake with your reservation. Your wife checked in yesterday with another gentleman." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My wife Sarah was supposed to be home with our kids, Amy and Ben. She'd kissed me goodbye 3 days ago, told me she loved me, and promised to help Ben with his science project. "What did you say?" "Your credit card was used for a deluxe suite. Mrs. Sarah Thompson, she's here now, with a man who isn't you." I sat there for a full 30 seconds, listening to the rain and feeling my world tilt sideways. 15 years of marriage. 2 kids, a mortgage, a life built on what I thought was solid ground, now revealed to be quicksand. "What room?" My voice sounded like gravel in a blender. "Sir, I probably shouldn't—" "What room?" "Suite 412. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the hotel window. Dave Thompson, 42 years old, project manager for Hartwell Construction, amateur boxer at Joe's Gym on weekends, father of 2, husband of 1 cheating wife. The face looking back at me belonged to a man I didn't recognize anymore. 20 minutes later, I was standing in the Grand Plaza's marble lobby, dripping rainwater onto their expensive carpet. The desk clerk, a nervous kid with acne and shifty eyes, pointed toward the elevators without being asked. The ride to the 4th floor felt like descending into a nightmare in slow motion. Each floor dinged past like a countdown to the end of everything I thought I knew about my life. I knocked on the door of Suite 412. Not pounded, not banged. Knocked, 3 polite raps like I was delivering room service. Footsteps approached. The door opened to reveal a man in a hotel bathrobe, hair tousled, looking like he'd just rolled out of bed. He was younger than me, better looking, with the kind of artificially white teeth that screamed life coach or motivational speaker. "Can I help you?" he asked, trying to sound authoritative while wearing nothing but terry cloth. "Yeah," I said, pushing past him into the suite. "You can start by explaining why you're wearing a bathrobe paid for with my credit card." The suite was nice, really nice. Champagne bucket, scattered clothes, the kind of romantic setup that cost more than I made in a week. And there, emerging from the bathroom in a silk negligee I'd never seen before, was my wife. "Dave?" Sarah's face went white as a fresh paint. "What are you doing here?" "Funny story," I said, settling into an armchair like I owned the place. "I was in my crappy hotel room, working late to pay for our kids' college funds, when I got a call about a billing error. Turns out my wife was living it up in a luxury suite with Fabio here." The man in the bathrobe stepped forward. "Look, buddy, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I interrupted, "is me thinking my wife had enough class not to use our joint credit card to pay for her affair." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. "Dave, I can explain." "Oh, I bet you can. 15 years of marriage, and you've gotten really good at creative storytelling." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The champagne, the scattered clothes, the 2 of them looking like they'd been caught robbing a bank. "What are you doing?" Bathrobe guy demanded. "Documenting evidence for my divorce attorney. Say cheese, Romeo." He lunged for my phone. Big mistake. I'd been boxing at Joe's Gym for 10 years, and all that frustration with late contractors and missed deadlines had given me some serious anger to work with. I sidestepped his grab, and he stumbled into the champagne bucket, sending ice and expensive bottle crashing to the floor. "Oops. I said, didn't mean to let you slip like that." Sarah was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks like black rivers. "Dave, please, let me explain. It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that while I was working 60-hour weeks to keep our family afloat, you were playing house with Tony Robbins here." I gestured at bathrobe guy who was trying to salvage what was left of his dignity while mopping champagne off his legs. "His name is Derek," Sarah said quietly. "I don't care if his name is Prince William. He's about to become a footnote in our divorce proceedings." I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights blurred by rain. "You know what the really funny part is? I was going to surprise you next week. Had dinner reservations at that French place you love. Bought you a necklace for our anniversary. Dave, I'm not finished. I turned back to face them both. I called child services and on my way over here. Told them our kids have been home alone for 2 days while their mother was off playing 50 Shades of Pathetic. Sarah's face went from white to green. You didn't. Oh, but I did. They're sending someone to check on Amy and Ben tomorrow morning. Better hope they're okay, because abandonment is a serious charge in custody hearings. Derek finally found his voice. Look, man, I didn't know she was married. Bees. I pulled out my phone again and showed him Sarah's Facebook profile. Wedding ring clearly visible in her profile picture. Unless you're illiterate, you knew exactly what you were doing. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. By the way, Derek, you might want to check your car in the parking lot. I may have accidentally keyed it while I was looking for the right entrance. And I definitely accidentally put sugar in your gas tank. Whoops. His face went purple. You son of a witch! Careful, I said, smiling for the first time all night. I'm documenting everything for the police report you're probably going to file. Wouldn't want them to think you were threatening me. As I reached for the door handle, hotel security appeared in the hallway. 2 large men in uniform, looking official and annoyed. Sir, we've had reports of a disturbance, the larger one said. I looked back at Sarah, who was holding her phone with shaking hands. Let me guess. The grieving widow called for help. He's threatening us, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. He destroyed Derek's car, and he's taking pictures without our consent. The security guard looked at me, then at the champagne-soaked suite, then back at me. Sir, we're going to have to ask you to come with us. No problem, I said. I got what I came for. As they escorted me toward the elevator, I heard Derek shouting something about pressing charges and Sarah sobbing like her world was ending, which I supposed it was. The funny thing about rock bottom is that it gives you a solid place to start building your revenge. The police station smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat in a plastic chair for 3 hours while they sorted out what charges, if any, would be filed against me. Turns out keying someone's car is vandalism. But it's hard to prove when there are no cameras and the victim can't explain why he was in a hotel room with another man's wife. They let me go with a warning at 4 a.m. I drove home through empty streets, past closed diners and flickering streetlights, thinking about how quickly a life can fall apart. 3 days ago, I was a happily married father of 2. Now, I was a single dad with a vandalism warning and a wife who was probably already planning her defense strategy. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Amy's car was there, which meant she'd been watching Ben like I'd asked her to before I left for my business trip. Good kid. Better parent than her mother, apparently. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, looking at the house Sarah and I had bought 12 years ago. We'd painted the shutters blue together, planted the oak tree in the front yard, installed that stupid mailbox shaped like a lighthouse because Sarah thought it was whimsical. Now it all looked like evidence of a life that had been built on lies. My phone buzzed. Text message from Sarah. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. Another buzz. This time from Derek. You're going to pay for what you did to my car. I screenshot that one. Threatening messages would come in handy during divorce proceedings. Inside, the house felt different, smaller, like the walls had moved closer together while I was gone. I checked on the kids. Amy asleep in her room. Ben sprawled across his bed with his science textbook still open beside him. They looked peaceful. Innocent. They had no idea their world was about to explode. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, even though it was almost dawn and I hadn't slept. The familiar routine felt comforting. Measure the grounds, add the water, press the button, wait for the magic. Simple. Predictable. Unlike everything else in my life, the coffee was still brewing when my phone rang. Sarah again. Dave, please, we need to talk about this like adults. Adults? I laughed, and it came out harsher than I intended. Adults don't abandon their children to play house with their personal trainers. He's not my personal trainer. He's a life coach. Oh, well, that makes it so much better. You're screwing a life coach. I feel so much more dignified now. Dave, please. Here's how this is going to work, Sarah. You're going to come home, pack your things, and get out. The kids stay with me. You can see them on weekends, supervised, after we work out custody through lawyers. You can't keep me from my children. Watch me. Child Services is coming by this morning to check on Amy and Ben. Want to guess what they're going to find? Two kids who've been taking care of themselves for 3 days while mommy was off finding herself in a hotel suite. Silence on the other end of the line. I'll be home in an hour, she said finally. Take your time. I'm changing the locks at 9. I hung up and called Joe's gym. Joe answered on the second ring, which didn't surprise me. The man got up at 5 a.m. every day and had for the past 30 years. Dave, little early, even for you. Joe, I need some advice. It may be a heavy bag to hit for a few hours. What happened? I told him everything. The hotel call, the confrontation, the police station, the whole sordid mess. Joe listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I'd always liked about him. So what do you want to do about it? He asked when I finished. I want to destroy them both. Professionally, personally, socially. I want them to regret the day they decided to mess with my family. Okay, but you got to be smart about it. You go swinging wild, you'll miss your target and hit yourself. You want to win this fight? You hit them where it hurts most, which is where? Their reputations, their wallets, their pride, make them famous for all the wrong reasons. Joe was right. I'd been thinking like a victim, reacting emotionally. What I needed to do was think like a strategist, plan my moves, hit them where they couldn't hit back. Sarah arrived home at 7:30 a.m. Looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. She was wearing the same clothes from the hotel, and her makeup was smeared from crying. She looked pathetic, which would have made me feel sorry for her 3 days ago. Now it just made me angry. Where are my children? She asked. Our children are asleep upstairs, where they've been for the past 3 days while you were off playing house. I made a mistake, Dave, a terrible mistake, but I love you, and I love our kids, and we can work through this. I stared at her for a long moment. You charged a luxury hotel suite to our joint credit card, Sarah. You didn't just cheat on me, you made me pay for it. That's not a mistake. That's contempt. She started crying again. I know how it looks. It looks like you're a selfish, thoughtless woman who put her own desires ahead of her family's well-being. And you know what? That's exactly what you are. The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted us. Amy appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, looking confused and worried. Dad, Mom, what's going on? Sarah rushed toward her daughter, but Amy stepped back instinctively. Smart kid. She could sense the tension in the room. Nothing, sweetheart, Sarah said. Mommy and Daddy are just talking. About getting divorced, I added. Because lies had gotten us into this mess, and I wasn't about to start telling more of them. Amy's face went white. What? Your mother has been having an affair. She's been lying to all of us for months. Now she's going to pack her things and move out. Dave, Sarah snapped. You can't just... I can't what? Tell our daughter the truth? She's 17 years old, Sarah. She's not stupid. Amy looked back and forth between us, processing the information. Then she looked at her mother with an expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment, disgust. Is it true? She asked. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. It's complicated. Is it true? Amy repeated. Yes, Sarah whispered. Amy nodded once, then turned and walked back upstairs. A minute later, her bedroom door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Look what you've done, Sarah said. Look what I've done. I'm not the one who was screwing around in a hotel room while our kids made their own dinner and did their own homework. The doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see a woman in a business suit carrying a clipboard. Child services, right on time. That's my cue to let the professionals handle this, I said, walking toward the door. The social worker was a middle-aged African-American woman named Mrs. Patterson, who looked like she'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. She spent an hour interviewing the kids separately, checking the refrigerator, looking at their homework, asking questions about their routine. When she finished, she sat Sarah and me down at the kitchen table. The children appear to be well cared for, she said. They're clean, fed, keeping up with schoolwork, and show no signs of neglect or misuse. However, Mrs. Thompson, I'm concerned about reports that you've been absent from the home for extended periods. I was dealing with a personal crisis, Sarah said. While your children were unsupervised, Amy is 17, Amy is a minor, and Ben is 14. Leaving them alone for multiple days without adult supervision is considered neglect under state law. Sarah's face went pale. I didn't realize. I'm going to file a report recommending that primary custody remain with Mr. Thompson pending resolution of your divorce proceedings. You'll be allowed supervised visitation twice a week. After Mrs. Patterson left, Sarah turned to me with fury in her eyes. You planned this. You called them before you even talked to me. I protected our children from an irresponsible mother. If that makes me the bad guy, I can live with that. She stormed upstairs and started packing. I could hear her throwing things around, slamming drawers, muttering under her breath. An hour later, she came back down with 2 suitcases and a look of pure hatred. This isn't over, Dave. You're right, I said. It's just getting started. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list. Sarah's employer, her friends, her social media contacts, Derek's business associates, his clients, his social media followers, everyone who needed to know exactly what kind of people they really were. Time to get to work. Derek Mansfield ran his life coaching business out of a rented conference room at the Marriott downtown. His website was a masterpiece of motivational BS. Stock photos of sunrises, quotes about unleashing your inner champion, and testimonials that sounded like they were written by the same person using different names. I spent a week studying him, his schedule, his habits, his clients, his weaknesses. The man was a walking advertisement for everything wrong with the self-help industry, all flash, no substance, preying on people desperate enough to pay $200 an hour for generic advice they could get from a fortune cookie. His next seminar was titled, Breaking Through Barriers, Unleash Your Authentic Self. The irony was delicious. A man who'd built his career on helping people find authenticity while sleeping with married women. I registered for the seminar under a fake name, paid the $100 fee, and showed up Saturday morning with a notebook and a plan. The hotel conference room was packed with about 50 people, mostly middle-aged professionals who looked like they were having midlife crises. Derek stood at the front in an expensive suit, white teeth gleaming, gesturing dramatically as he talked about breaking free from limiting beliefs. The only thing standing between you and your dreams, he was saying, is the story you tell yourself about why you can't achieve them. I raised my hand. Yes, you in the back? I stood up. I have a question about authenticity. What advice would you give to someone whose authentic self involves sleeping with married women and destroying families? The room went dead silent. Derek's smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. I'm not sure I understand the question. Let me be more specific. What would you tell a life coach who uses his position to manipulate vulnerable women into affairs, then charges their husbands' credit cards for hotel rooms? Now people were starting to murmur and look around. Derek's face was turning red, but he was trying to maintain his composure. Sir, I think you might be in the wrong seminar. Actually, I'm exactly where I need to be. I pulled out my phone and held up the photos from the hotel room. See, my wife Sarah Thompson has been one of your clients for the past 6 months. Really helped her break through her barriers, especially the barrier of her marriage vows. The murmuring got louder. People were pulling out their phones, taking pictures and video. Derek was starting to panic. Security, he called out. What's wrong, Derek? I thought this was about unleashing our authentic selves. This is me being authentic. A husband and father whose family was destroyed by a con artist who preys on married women. I started walking toward the front of the room. Derek backed away like I was carrying a tool. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Derek Mansfield, life coach and home wrecker. He'll help you find yourself, right into someone else's bed. That's when Derek made his second big mistake of the week. He tried to grab my phone. I'd been hitting the heavy bag at Joe's gym every morning since the hotel incident, working out my anger and frustration with methodical precision. My reflexes were sharp, my timing was perfect, and my patience with pretty boys in expensive suits was non-existent. I sidestepped his lunge, and he stumbled past me into the front row of chairs. The audience gasped. Someone screamed. Derek scrambled to his feet, his perfect hair messed up, his suit wrinkled. "You're crazy!" he shouted. No, I said calmly. I'm motivated. There's a difference. Hotel security arrived just as Derek was trying to restore order to his seminar. The audience was filing out, talking excitedly, already posting videos to social media. Derek's career as a motivational speaker had just taken a very public hit. Sir, we need you to leave, the security guard said. No problem. I got what I came for. As I walked toward the exit, I turned back to address the remaining audience members. Word of advice, folks. If you want authentic life coaching, find someone who doesn't sleep with his clients' wives. Just a thought. Outside in the parking lot, Derek caught up with me. He ditched the suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, trying to look tough. You son of a witch. You just destroyed my reputation. Your reputation destroyed itself the minute you decided to screw married women. I just helped spread the news. He swung at me. Poor technique. Telegraphed the punch from a mile away. Put all his weight behind it, like he was throwing a baseball. I ducked under his fist and gave him a light slap across the face. Not hard enough to hurt him, just hard enough to humiliate him in front of the hotel guests who were watching from the lobby windows. He stumbled backward, more from shock than impact, and tripped over his own feet. He landed on his A in a puddle left over from the previous night's rain. Jesus, Derek. For a guy who teaches people about inner strength, you sure don't have much outer coordination. I walked away, leaving him sitting in the puddle, and drove home feeling better than I had in weeks. That evening, I got a call from my lawyer, Bill Morrison. Bill and I had played poker together for 5 years, and he was handling my divorce pro bono as a favor. Dave, I just got off the phone with Sarah's attorney. They want to negotiate. What kind of negotiation? Full custody to you, minimal alimony. She keeps her car and personal belongings. In exchange, you agree not to pursue criminal charges for credit card fraud or child abandonment. I thought about it for about 2 seconds. Counteroffer, full custody, no alimony. She pays child support, and I reserve the right to pursue criminal charges if she violates the custody agreement. That's pretty harsh, Dave. She used our joint credit card to pay for her affair, Bill, while our kids were home alone making cereal for dinner. Harsh doesn't begin to cover what she deserves. I'll make the call. After I hung up, I sat on the back porch with a beer and looked at the oak tree Sarah and I had planted 12 years ago. It had grown tall and strong, its roots deep in the ground, unlike our marriage, which had apparently been growing in shallow soil all along. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This isn't over. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Bill. Then I called Joe. How do you feel about having some company at the gym for the next few weeks? I asked. Trouble? The kind that thinks threatening text messages are a good idea. Bring it on. I've been looking for an excuse to teach some manners. I finished my beer and went inside to check on the kids. Amy was doing homework at the kitchen table, and Ben was in the living room playing video games. Normal kid stuff. The kind of routine that Sarah had been willing to abandon for a few nights with a fake life coach. Dad? Amy looked up from her textbook. Are you okay? I'm getting there, sweetheart. How are you holding up? She shrugged. Mom called earlier. She wants to take me shopping this weekend. What did you tell her? That I was busy. Smart kid. She'd figured out which parent was reliable and which one wasn't. It shouldn't have made me proud, but it did. Amy, I want you to know that none of this is your fault or Ben's fault. Sometimes adults make bad choices and other adults have to deal with the consequences. I know, Dad, and I want you to know that what you did at that guy's seminar is already all over social media. My friends think you're awesome. I laughed despite everything. Language, young lady. Sorry, my friends think you're an awesome one. That's not really the point. Dad, she looked at me seriously. Mom hurt our family. She hurt you. She hurt me and Ben. What you did was protect us. Don't feel guilty about that. 17 years old, and she understood the situation better than most adults would have. I was raising good kids despite their mother's best efforts to screw things up. My phone rang. Sarah. Dave, we need to talk. We have lawyers for that now. This is about the kids. The kids are fine. They're home, they're safe, they're doing their homework. You know, all the things they were doing while you were playing house with Derek. I made a mistake. You made a choice. A selfish, destructive choice that hurt everyone in this family. Now you get to live with the consequences. I want to see my children. Talk to your lawyer. Set up supervised visits. Follow the custody agreement. Act like a responsible adult for once in your life. I hung up and deleted her number from my phone. Then I made another call. Bill, it's Dave. I've been thinking about that negotiation. Add one more condition. Sarah and Derek are both banned from contacting me directly. All communication goes through lawyers. And if either one of them comes near my house or my kids' school, I'm calling the police. I'll add it to the agreement. Good. Oh, and Bill, make sure Derek's lawyer knows that I have copies of all his threatening text messages. Harassment charges are still on the table if he wants to keep playing games. After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. For the first time since this whole mess started, I was the one setting the terms. I was the one making the rules. And I was just getting started. Sarah's best friend, Melissa Chen, had always rubbed me the wrong way. She was the type of woman who smiled to your face while mentally calculating how much your house was worth and whether your job was impressive enough to mention at dinner parties. She drove a BMW she couldn't afford, wore designer clothes that were probably knockoffs, and had opinions about everything despite never having accomplished anything herself. What I hadn't realized until recently was that Melissa had been the one encouraging Sarah's affair from the beginning. I discovered this by accident while helping Amy clean out her car. Her phone was connected to the Bluetooth system, and when a text came in, it automatically displayed on the dashboard screen. The message was from Melissa. "Did you tell your dad about the girls' trip to Vegas yet?" "What girls' trip to Vegas?" I asked. Amy looked confused. "What are you talking about?" I showed her the message. Her face went pale. "Dad, I've been getting messages from Aunt Mel for weeks. She keeps asking me about Mom's schedule, about when you're traveling for work, about weird stuff." "What kind of weird stuff?" Amy pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. "Look at this. She asked me when Mom started going to the gym, when she bought new clothes, when she started working late. It's like she was keeping track of everything." I stared at the messages, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Melissa hadn't just known about the affair. She'd been orchestrating it. Probably feeding Sarah advice, covering for her, maybe even introducing her to Derek in the first place. "Amy, I need you to do something for me. Keep responding to Melissa's messages, but show me everything before you send it." "Can you do that? Are you going to get her in trouble?" "I'm going to get her the exact amount of trouble she deserves." That evening, I drove to Melissa's condo in the upscale part of town. She lived in one of those modern glass towers that looked impressive from the outside but had paper-thin walls and no soul. Perfect for someone like her. I called her from the parking lot. "Dave, what a surprise. How are you holding up?" Her voice was dripping with fake sympathy, like she was talking to a terminal cancer patient instead of the man whose marriage she'd helped destroy. "I'm doing great, Mel. In fact, I'm downstairs in your parking lot. Mind if I come up? I have something I'd like to discuss with you." Silence on the other end of the line. "Actually, Dave, this isn't a great time." "Oh, but it's a perfect time. See, I just discovered some interesting text messages between you and my daughter. Messages that suggest you've been playing puppet master in my family's destruction." More silence. "I'll be right up. What's your unit number again?" She buzzed me up without another word. The elevator ride to the 15th floor gave me time to check the recording app on my phone. In a one-party consent state, I could legally record our conversation as long as I was part of it. Melissa opened the door wearing yoga pants and a designer sweatshirt that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Her face was carefully composed, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "Dave, come in. Can I get you something to drink?" "Just answers, Mel. Starting with how long you've been helping my wife cheat on me." She led me to her living room, which looked like a furniture showroom. Everything perfectly arranged. Nothing personal, no warmth. We sat across from each other on matching white leather chairs. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is me thinking you were Sarah's friend instead of her pimp." Her carefully composed mask slipped for a second, revealing the calculating woman underneath. "That's a horrible thing to say. It's a horrible thing to do, but you did it anyway, didn't you? You encouraged her affair, helped her cover her tracks, probably even helped her pick out lingerie for her hotel dates. Sarah is an adult who makes her own choices." Bees. I pulled out my phone and started playing Amy's recorded messages. Melissa's voice filled the room, asking detailed questions about Sarah's schedule, my work trips, the kids' activities. "You were gathering intelligence, Mel, like a spy, helping Sarah coordinate her affair around my business travel and the kids' school schedules." Her face went white. "Those messages don't prove anything. They prove you were actively participating in the destruction of my marriage. Question is, why? What did you get out of it?" She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. When she turned back, her expression had changed completely. The fake sympathy was gone, replaced by something cold and bitter. "You want to know why? Because you destroyed my life 5 years ago, and I've been waiting for the perfect opportunity to return the favor." Now we were getting somewhere. 5 years ago, what are you talking about? Morrison Construction, the accounting job. Ring any bell? It took me a second, then I remembered. Melissa had worked for Morrison Construction as a bookkeeper before Bill Morrison started his law practice. She'd been fired for embezzlement, stealing money from client accounts to fund her lifestyle. You were stealing from the company, Mel. I caught you and reported it to Bill. That's not destroying your life. That's called consequences. You could have talked to me first, given me a chance to pay it back. But no, you had to be the hero, didn't you? Had to do the right thing. You stole $40,000 from a construction company that employed 30 people. You weren't planning to pay it back. You were planning to keep stealing until you got caught. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. And now look at you, divorced, humiliated, your kids growing up in a broken home. How does it feel to be the victim for once? I stood up and walked toward her slowly. She backed against the window. It feels like I finally understand who my real enemy is. Sarah was just the tool. You were the one pulling the trigger. Prove it. I held up my phone. Already did. This entire conversation has been recorded, including the part where you admit to orchestrating my wife's affair as revenge for me reporting your embezzlement. Her face went from white to green. You can't record me without my consent. Actually, I can. One-party consent state, remember? You might want to brush up on the law before you plan your next revenge scheme. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. By the way, Mel, I still have all the evidence from your embezzlement case. Bank records, forged invoices, altered timesheets. Bill never pressed charges because you agreed to pay restitution and disappear. But if you want to keep playing games, I'm happy to forward everything to the district attorney. She slumped into her chair like a deflated balloon. What do you want? I want you to disappear from my family's life. No more contact with Sarah, no more messages to my kids, no more puppet master BS. You're done. And if I don't, then everyone in your social circle gets to hear this recording, your neighbors, your yoga class, your book club, everyone on your social media. They get to know exactly what kind of person you really are. I left her sitting in her sterile living room and drove home feeling like I'd just solved a homicide case. Sarah hadn't suddenly decided to have an affair. She'd been manipulated into it by a woman with a 5-year grudge and no conscience. Not that it excused Sarah's choices, but it explained them. And more importantly, it gave me the final piece of ammunition I needed to end this war once and for all. The next morning, I called Bill Morrison. Bill, remember Melissa Chen from your construction company? The bookkeeper who was stealing from client accounts? Unfortunately, yes. Why? She's been orchestrating Sarah's affair as revenge against me for reporting her embezzlement. I have a recorded confession. Silence on the other end of the line. Jesus, Dave, are you sure? Positive? I'm emailing you the recording now. I want to know what our legal options are. Give me a few hours to review this and consult with a colleague. This could change everything about your divorce case. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and thought about the past few months. Sarah's sudden interest in fitness, her new clothes, her late nights at work, her defensive behavior when I asked simple questions. All of it orchestrated by a woman who'd been playing the long game, waiting years for the perfect opportunity to destroy my family. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. My phone buzzed. Text message from Derek. Your wife wants you to stop harassing her friends. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Bill, then typed back, tell my soon-to-be ex-wife that her friends should stop harassing my family. Also, enjoy the unemployment line. Your seminar video has been viewed 50,000 times. His response came back immediately. You're going to pay for this. I forwarded that to Bill too, then blocked Derek's number. Let him make his threats to my lawyer from now on. Amy came downstairs for breakfast, looking worried. Dad, Aunt Mel called me last night. She was crying and saying weird stuff about how sorry she was and how she never meant to hurt our family. What did you tell her? I told her to call you if she wanted to apologize. Then I blocked her number. Good girl. Mel won't be bothering us anymore. What did you do? I poured myself another cup of coffee and considered how much to tell her. She was 17, smart, and had already figured out that the adults in her life weren't always trustworthy. I found out that Mel was the one who encouraged your mother's affair. She was getting revenge on me for something that happened years ago, and she used our family to do it. Amy's face went through several expressions: confusion, understanding, then anger. She destroyed our family because of some grudge against you? That's about the size of it. Dad, that's psychotic. Language. Dad, that's completely psychotic. I laughed despite everything. You're not wrong. My phone rang. Bill Morrison. Dave, I've reviewed the recording and consulted with a criminal attorney. Melissa could be charged with harassment, stalking, and possibly conspiracy. The evidence is solid. What about Derek? His threatening messages constitute harassment. Between that and the recording of Melissa's confession, we have enough to make both their lives very unpleasant. Good. Set up a meeting with Sarah's attorney. I want to renegotiate our divorce agreement. What are your terms? I looked around the kitchen where I'd made breakfast for my kids every morning for the past month, where I'd helped them with homework and listened to their problems and tried to keep their world stable while their mother was off playing house with a fake life coach. Full custody, no alimony. She pays child support, and she agrees to a restraining order against both Melissa and Derek. In exchange, I won't press criminal charges against any of them. That's generous, considering what they put you through. I'm not interested in revenge anymore, Bill. I just want them gone. But as I hung up the phone, I realized that wasn't entirely true. I had one more move to make. One final public demonstration of exactly what happens when you mess with my family. And I knew exactly where to make it. The Riverside Elementary School's annual fundraiser was the social event of the year for our community. Parents, teachers, local business owners, and politicians all gathered in the school auditorium to support arts and education programs, while networking and gossiping over rubber chicken and cheap wine. Sarah had been on the planning committee for 3 years running. She'd organized the silent auction, coordinated with local businesses for donations, and generally made herself indispensable to the event's success. It was her stage, her moment to shine in front of everyone who mattered in our social circle, which made it the perfect venue for my final move. I bought a table for 8 and invited Joe from the gym, Bill Morrison and his wife, Amy's boyfriend Tyler and his parents, and a couple of neighbors who'd been supportive during the divorce. Good people who deserved to know the truth about what had happened to our family. The auditorium was packed with about 300 people, all dressed in their suburban finest, making small talk and pretending to care about education funding while really just wanting to see and be seen. Sarah was at the front of the room, wearing a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before, playing hostess and working the crowd like a politician. She looked confident, poised, completely in control. She had no idea what was coming. Melissa was there too, sitting at a table near the back with some of the other divorced women from their book club. She kept glancing nervously around the room, probably wondering if I was going to show up. Derek wasn't there, which was smart. After the seminar incident and the harassment charges Bill had filed, he was keeping a low profile. Word on the street was that his life coaching business had collapsed, and he was working at a gym in the next town over, teaching spinning classes to soccer moms. The evening proceeded normally through dinner and the silent auction. I bid on a few items, made polite conversation with my table guests, and waited for my moment. It came during the speeches. The principal spoke about the importance of community support. The PTA president thanked everyone for their donations. The school board representative talked about budget challenges and the need for continued fundraising. Then Sarah took the microphone. Good evening, everyone. As co-chair of this year's fundraising committee, I want to thank you all for making tonight such a tremendous success. She launched into her prepared remarks about community spirit and supporting our children's education. She was good at this, confident, articulate, charming. The crowd was eating it up. I waited until she was wrapping up her speech, then stood and started walking toward the stage. Sarah, before you finish, I'd like to say something. The room went quiet. Sarah's face went pale, but she couldn't refuse without causing a scene. Of course, Dave, come on up. I climbed the steps to the stage and took the microphone from her trembling hands. 300 faces looked up at me, curious and expectant. Thank you. I want to talk about family values since that's what this fundraiser is really about. Supporting our children and strengthening our community. Murmurs of agreement from the audience. Sarah was standing beside me, frozen with terror. My wife Sarah and I have been part of this community for 15 years. Our kids go to school here. We've volunteered for countless events. We've tried to be good neighbors and responsible parents. More nods from the crowd. They had no idea where this was going. But recently, I discovered that some people in our community don't share those same values. Some people are willing to destroy families for their own selfish purposes. Now the murmurs were getting louder, more interested. Sarah was backing away from me, but there was nowhere to go on the small stage. 3 months ago, I discovered that my wife was having an affair with a man named Derek Mansfield. She was using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms while our children were home alone, making their own meals and doing their homework without supervision. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Sarah's face was red with humiliation, but I wasn't finished. But the real story isn't about my wife's poor judgment. It's about the person who orchestrated the whole thing. Someone who manipulated a vulnerable woman into destroying her family as part of a 5-year revenge plot. I looked directly at Melissa, who was trying to shrink into her chair. Melissa Chen, would you like to tell everyone why you encouraged my wife to have an affair? Would you like to explain how you used my daughter to gather intelligence about our family's schedule? Or should I play the recording of your confession for everyone to hear? Melissa stood up abruptly, knocking over her wine glass, and headed for the exit. But Joe and 2 of his gym buddies were already positioned by the doors. She stopped in the middle of the aisle. Trapped. You see, folks, Melissa used to work for Morrison Construction as a bookkeeper. 5 years ago, I caught her embezzling $40,000 from the company. When I reported her theft, she was fired and forced to pay restitution. Apparently, she's been planning her revenge ever since. The crowd was riveted now, hanging on every word. This was better than reality TV. She spent months manipulating my wife, feeding her advice about how to have an affair, helping her coordinate hotel visits with my business travel, even using my teenage daughter to gather information about our family's routines. I pulled out my phone and held it up. I have recordings of Melissa's confession. I have text messages between her and my daughter. I have evidence of a calculated, methodical campaign to destroy my marriage and traumatize my children. Sarah had started crying, mascara running down her cheeks. Several people in the audience were taking pictures and videos with their phones. But here's the thing about revenge. It only works if your target doesn't fight back. And I've been fighting back for months. I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. Derek Mansfield's life coaching business has collapsed after I exposed him as a predator who targets married women. He's facing harassment charges and working at a gym in the next town over, teaching spinning classes. Laughter from the audience. They were enjoying this now. Melissa Chen is facing stalking and conspiracy charges. Her confession is being reviewed by the district attorney's office. And my wife Sarah is losing custody of our children because she chose her selfish desires over their well-being. Sarah ran off the stage, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Several people tried to stop her, probably wanting to hear her side of the story, but she kept running. I looked out at the audience one final time. I want everyone here now to understand something. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just a father who protected his children from people who were willing to destroy their family for money, revenge, and cheap thrills. I set the microphone down and walked off the stage to thunderous applause. In the parking lot, Derek was waiting by my truck. He'd apparently decided to make an appearance after all. He looked like heck, unshaven, wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt instead of his usual expensive suits. "You son of a witch," he said as I approached. "You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life the minute you decided to sleep with married women." He swung at me, just like he had in the hotel parking lot. Same poor technique, same telegraphed punch, same predictable result. I ducked under his fist and gave him a light push. He stumbled backward and tripped over the concrete parking barrier, landing hard on his back. Jesus, Derek, you'd think a life coach would have better balance. Joe and his friends appeared beside me, having followed the action from inside. "Everything okay, Dave?" Joe asked. "Just taking out the trash," I said, looking down at Derek, who was struggling to get up. "You can't keep doing this to me," Derek whined. "I'm not doing anything to you. You're doing it to yourself. Every time you threaten me, every time you try to intimidate me, you just make yourself look more pathetic." I pulled out my phone and took a picture of him lying on the ground. "This is going straight to my lawyer and the police. Keep it up, Derek. You're building my harassment case for me." He finally managed to get to his feet and limped toward his car, a beat-up Honda that was a far cry from the BMW he'd been driving when I first met him. "This isn't over," he called out as he drove away. "Yes, it is," I said to his taillights. Joe clapped me on the shoulder. "Heck of a speech in there, Dave. Thanks, I've been practicing. What are you going to do now?" I looked back at the school auditorium, where people were still filing out, talking excitedly about what they'd just witnessed. In a few hours, the whole story would be all over social media. By tomorrow morning, everyone in town would know exactly what Sarah, Melissa, and Derek had done to my family. Now I go home to my kids and get on with my life. What about Sarah? Sarah made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I drove home through quiet streets, past houses where families were settling in for the night, kids doing homework, parents helping with projects, normal people living normal lives. The kind of life I was going to rebuild with Amy and Ben. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but I could see the glow of the TV in the living room. Amy and Ben were probably watching a movie, enjoying a quiet Saturday night at home. As I walked up the front steps, my phone buzzed with a text message from Bill Morrison. Saw the video on Facebook. Sarah's attorney called. She's agreed to all our terms. Congratulations, Dave, you won. I deleted the message and put my phone away. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about protecting my children and making sure that people who hurt families face consequences for their actions. Inside, Amy and Ben were curled up on the couch watching some superhero movie. They looked up when I came in. "How was the fundraiser, Dad?" Amy asked. "Educational," I said, sitting down between them. "How was your evening?" "Boring," Ben said. "But good boring." "Good boring is underrated," I agreed. We sat there for a while, watching explosions and witty dialogue, just a father and his kids having a quiet night at home. It wasn't the life I'd planned 15 years ago, but it was a good life. An honest life, a life built on truth instead of lies. My phone rang one last time, Sarah's number. I let it go to voicemail, then deleted the message without listening to it. Whatever she had to say, I'd already heard enough. Outside, it started to rain again, drumming against the windows like applause. I pulled a blanket over my kids and settled in to watch the rest of the movie. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace.